Welcome everyone to Pivotal. This is the podcast where I talk to business owners about the journey that got them here, what they thought, what they felt, what they believed in those moments that in the moment feel like, oh my goodness, life can get any worse. But when you look back, you realize that those were the pivotal moments that made you who you are today. So I'm Tara, your host, the founder of McEwen Media and media coach. I help business owners unearth the truly magical story that can transform their brand and their business. And I think today we're going to experience a similar journey with my guest. Tamar Lyons is an entrepreneur, owner of a social media marketing agency, and host of the Unapologetic Confidence podcast. She's a digital nomad who scaled her business after getting divorced at a young age. She empowers entrepreneurs to build bold, high-converting brands. She's known for her strategic approach to content and for her resilience. Tamar has helped founders and business owners generate massive visibility with content that converts online. So please welcome to the stage, Tamar.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I feel like, I don't know, getting divorced at a young age, building an agency, all these things, you've lived a life. How old are you?
I'm 29 right now. I know I'm 29 like in years, but I feel like, yeah, exactly as you said, I've lived so much that I feel like so much beyond that. But yeah, I'm 29.
I know. I mean, I turned 48 my next birthday. So I'm, almost double your age. And I think back to when I was 29, I had just started figuring out my career. And I feel like you're kind of at that stage too, even though you've checked a lot of boxes. So let's begin then where you are today. What are you building and how does it feel to build this business for you today?
Yeah, totally. So I started my social media marketing agency 4 years. It's actually 4.5 years ago, which is wild to think about. And yeah, we've scaled very quickly. It's been something that has been, it's my passion. I get to do what I love every single day. And it's just so amazing. I think that having created, my agency and getting to work in social media and telling people's stories for a living and getting to be creative has just been the most empowering, wonderful experience. And so I'm just so grateful that I get to do that.
Oh, amazing. What a wonderful place to start from. Is this how you thought your career would be looking like when you first started?
No, absolutely not. So when I went to school, I studied radio and television. I thought I would be a producer. I had interned on, in the television world, things like that. And so I definitely knew I wanted to be telling people stories. I definitely knew I wanted to be in, documentary television, something like that, lifestyle television. And that was definitely not the route. I interned and I had experiences there, but it's not where I ended up. But one of the cool things is I've been reflecting and I actually come to realize that the work that I do through social media, helping people tell their story, I still am a storyteller. I am helping people tell their stories. It's just in a completely different medium. So not what I expected starting out, but I still am accomplishing the same goal.
And I mean, we can, full disclosure, like you interned on the show that I famously worked on for many seasons, like the Marilyn Dennis show. And I think that this is where I'm so fascinated with your story and like when you came into the media scene, because by that point, I as an old broad professional, I'm like, oh, the writing is on the wall. This TV thing, like this. I started my career in the early 2000s. So when I first started my media career, I thought I would spend the rest of my life working in newspapers. I thought newsprint was going to be my career. And that was actually my first attempt of, oh no, the floor is shifting beneath our feet. Something new is happening. And I had already been working in television when social media came on the scene. I think for the entirety of my career, I've been watching the tides change into digital media. And I think where digital media is at right now is in its glory days of storytelling. I think in the early days that we were kind of figuring stuff out, I remember Poke Wars and, my early feeds were just pictures of my dinner. But now I think we're really seeing it for what it is, which is a media platform and almost rewriting the rules. Well, if this actually is a media platform, how do we as creators want this platform to exist for the greater good of society? So I think you are in the absolute perfect place to be a professional storyteller.
Thank you. You know, and it's interesting you say that too, because I remember the first day when I was in university, the first day at orientation, one of the professors, the first thing he said was, most of you are going to be working jobs 4 years from now that don't exist right now.
Yeah.
And there was no such thing as a social media manager back when I started school. You know, when I graduated in 2019, like, you know, it was become obviously, you know, brands and businesses were using social media, but exactly as you said, Facebook, you know, people were sending posts to their friends and you were posting your dinner, your food, things like that. It really was not a highly leveraged way to be marketing. And so, yeah, I think it's a really fun time to be in this industry. I get to be super creative. My clients get to be super creative. And we're just seeing this whole shift. But I think the big shift that I love is that the power is back in the business owner. The power is not to have a broadcaster. You don't have to have, you know, somebody telling you what you can say or giving you a platform. All of us have the ability to create that platform for ourselves, which is what I find super exciting about social media. Very empowering.
Let's spend some more time then in the beginning, because like in your intro, like you're 29, you're already divorced. I don't want to, you know, like focus so much on that, but that's unique. Like there are and I think when you were interning at the Maryland Dentist Show, you were engaged. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this girl is on the accelerated program. So let's look back at you know, Tamar, from that was what, 7 years ago?
Yeah, 7 years ago.
Okay.
Or no,
So,
it was closer to 8. Yeah.
okay.
But
Okay,
yeah.
so let's go back in time and just look objectively. You from 8 years ago, you're checking a lot of boxes, right? You're interning at the, you know, the number one talk show on the number one network. You're engaged. Your adulting dance card is filling up. So what was going through your brain as you were checking all those boxes?
Yeah, that's actually a really great way of you know, looking at and putting it. I think I felt like I had been doing everything right. You know, like exactly as you said, I had an amazing internship. I was getting experience. I had, you know, a job lined up after school, after I graduated. I had, you know, I was going to get married. You know, all the things, my whole life in everything that I knew it was going to be the way that it should be.
Mm.
And I felt very, you know, excited. I felt, you know, like, yes, it was kind of, I don't know if it was weird, but if I knew it was different, that, you know, I was so young and like, you know, I was going to do this. I was going to go, you know, get married and have this whole life. But I was excited. I was really, you know, I was following a life path that, you know, was very traditional with the insular community that I'd grown up in. But I definitely didn't really know a different way. I've always been like a big high achiever. I've always been, you know, I have to do everything like to the best, to the best degree. And yeah, as you said, like I was definitely on the accelerated path. So I felt very excited and good about it. But I also didn't feel that I was making the choices. I felt it was a lot of these choices had been made for me. There was no option of going down a different path. This is just what you did. You know, the fact that I got married at 22 was kind of late for me, actually. You know, so I think it definitely was. I felt like I was following a path that was laid out for me that I wasn't exactly choosing. I was just kind of doing because that was the right thing to do.
I think late and early, especially with these again pivotal life choices, late and early is a relative term, right? My grandmother was 19, 18 actually when she got married, 19 when she had my mom. My mother was 24 and she had thought that she was getting married late. I think her sisters also got married early. We're living in a very special point in time, not just from a media standpoint, but also from a professional woman standpoint, right? Like the fact that there's a late or an early, or that marriage doesn't even have to be on your checklist. This is there. I don't think there's ever been another point in history where we have these choices. So it's kind of that weird space of like, you grow up expecting, and I love that how you even use the air quotes around should, right? We grow up expecting life should go a certain way. And when you're high achieving, I feel like it's just in your innate ability. You have an idea, you take action on it. So yeah, I want to work in TV. I'm going to did an internship at Bell Media. I want to get married. You're the guy. Let's go to it. Like what are we waiting for? Like that's just who you are. But you're almost borrowing someone else's playbook. So at what point did you start to realize I'm checking a lot of boxes, They're not my boxes though. When was that? When did that awareness start to come up for you?
I think I don't know that I had the awareness until around the pandemic. And
Okay.
the reason, and it's interesting and kind of, I don't know if the word is ironic or if it's very apropos. We'll
Yeah.
see. But I saw a TikTok video, which I think is kind of funny because now I'm working in social. But there was a couple TikTok videos that I saw during the pandemic that really landed with me, that got me to start thinking differently.
Mm.
And the first video was, there's somebody out there doing the thing that you want to do, the thing that you love and you're great at. And the only difference between them and you is that they're taking action. And that really
Mm.
hit me, because I always felt that, like, I had this something inside of me, this like fire burning, where I could achieve more and do more. And I didn't feel like I was being I didn't feel like I was using the full scope of my creative abilities when I was in TV. I know, obviously it's a pretty small industry,
Mhm.
especially in Canada, right? We don't have that many broadcasters. There's not that many production companies.
Mhm.
And so there are, like, just literally, there aren't that many jobs for you to
Mhm.
get. So you do have to work your way up. You do have to build a reputation. You do have to put in the reps before you get to the top, which is totally reasonable. I just felt, for me, is that being high achieving, I had a skill set that was here, but I felt like I had to go through, like, climb the whole ladder to even do what I was good at doing, that I already had the skills for. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I think during the pandemic, I just started realizing, I can produce, I can film a video, I can put out content. I don't have to be 10 years in the television industry before I can start telling stories. But I
Mhm.
felt that in the path that I was going on, that was my trajectory, is that I would
Mhm.
have to work, 10 years doing the things I didn't want to be doing in order to even get to the point where I could do what I did want to be doing. And then, yeah, I just kept seeing, like, these types of videos on TikTok. That was the first one. The second one was a young girl saying that she was making, 6 figures a year being a social media manager. And I didn't even know that that was possible. And I was like, what? How are you doing this? What? Like, that's not possible. But then I just started saying, oh, if it's possible for her, it's possible for me. And so
Yeah.
those were two really big videos. I have them both saved because they definitely, kind of lit that fire under me in order to actually take action. But those were two, it was definitely like during the pandemic where I started realizing I don't have to wait for somebody else's permission to
Yeah.
start doing the things that I love. And
Yeah.
that was in the career space. But I think that through my journey of growing and scaling my business, it has been a very authentic, empowering, soul building mission and experience for me, that my life and my marriage and my divorce all kind of came through that, because I was growing and stepping into my authenticity and becoming in alignment with my higher self. So I
Mhm.
think we definitely came together.
I think the beautiful thing about the pandemic was it was this global pause where, because so much of our daily lives were stripped from us, there was this instant awareness of, well, if everything can change in a dime, then that means all the rules, all the shoulds, the playbook, the to-do list that I was filling, I don't have to live by that anymore. I can create something entirely new.
It is, the whole fabric of the world is changing.
Yeah.
How much can that apply to my own life and my career? And yeah, it was something that I felt, because everything was kind of, I guess, like, at the low point.
Mhm.
I didn't think that there was anything to lose, to be honest. So,
Mhm.
starting my business, there was really nothing for me to lose.
Mhm.
I was working in a small production company at the time. And I thankfully, like, had, job security. I didn't lose my job during the pandemic, because I was working in such a small company, and we were still able to do, social media work and other, brand partnerships, things like that. And I just built this up on the side. And then, eventually, there was another pivotal moment, which I can bring up. And yeah, like, I had one freelance client on the side as I was working full time in TV. And I just remember it was during the pandemic. Things were really bad. My mental health was not great, was not optimal. I was not feeling great. I felt like my body was always hurting. It was just, like, not a good time, as many people I'm sure can
Mhm.
relate, like, during the pandemic. It was already a year in. And I had been I had been doing social media management on the side with one client. So I was just a freelancer. I had no intention of building an agency. And I remember I used to meet with this client at 6 a.m. because I was working, and really, really long days. And I was starting at 8 in the morning and ending at 10 p.m. sometimes. And I just remember after a really long day, I was really depressed. I was really feeling creatively strained and like really not living to my potential. And I remember just like crying on this client call, like we had a meeting like later that evening at like 9 p.m. And she sat me down and said, Tamar, I need to ask you something serious. I said, okay. She says, do you want to be living a mediocre life? And me being the high achieving girl who, I had my life together at 22, I'm checking all the boxes. I'm married. I have the job. Had the best internship, all these things. Absolutely not. I do not want to be living a mediocre life. And that was just that shock that I needed in my system, that pattern interrupt. And the next day I quit my job. I quit the next day? No, I decided I was going to quit the next day.
Close enough.
I had the scheduled email with my notice going out. But you know what I mean? And so I just think it's so for me personally, I was programmed and I was taught and I was socialized based on how I grew up. Like, this is the way you have to do things. This is the way the career is going to look. This is the way your life is going to look. And then I made choices that were not in alignment with what I'd always been told. And then I've created this life, created this career where, like I have this freedom, and I'm so grateful. And it's all a result of having made those choices that were difficult, hard choices, but not, the traditional route that everyone tells you you should go down.
I don't want to speed through this point in life though, because I think it's one thing to say, someone came out of the blue and said, do you want to lead a mediocre life? No, I don't. I'm going to take action right away. You did and you didn't. Making being in these pivotal moments, it's actually hard to be in the day-to-day, because there's the life that and then there's the great unknown. The great unknown is undefined. You may have gotten some hints, right? There's a TikTok video that says you can make 6 figures being a social media manager. Spoiler alert, not every social media manager makes 6 figures a year, right? But there are these hints at what is possible for you.
Yeah.
But I think it's so many people stay in that space of they've got one foot on first base and one foot on second base, right? They're trying to balance both of these things, and the mediocrity isn't necessarily what that first life was. It was just, I'm meant for something else, and I'm trying to hold on to both. I'm holding on to what's familiar because I'm not quite sure what this new thing is. Even doing social media management like on the side, first thing in the morning, in the evening, it's like, no, just make a decision and make it work. But that is the hardest decision and choice to make. So while you were kind of in this in-between space, what was like, you've got this checklist, right? You're on the accelerated program. Out of all the things on your checklist, what was starting to weigh you down? What was the first thing that you felt like this steaming pile of turd needs to be dropped first?
Well, I think, I love what you just said, but I think truly the thing that needed to be dropped first was the idea that I couldn't make a quick decision.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
Where the pain is. And that's what I learned in that moment. The biggest lesson that I learned is that pain is in the indecision. Yeah. It's when you can't stay at that job anymore. You can't make it work. You can't be in that marriage anymore, that relationship anymore, whatever it might be. Yet you're still not making a decision. Am I going to stay? Am I not going to stay? Am I going to quit the job? Am I not going to quit the job? That, to me, I learned that was where all the pain was. So I'd say going through there was a point before that point where because when that client came to me and asked me that question, that wasn't the first time I had thought about quitting my job. I knew I was miserable. Yeah. I was there probably for it was already probably 6 or 7 months into wanting to quit my job, and I hadn't. And I think that at that moment it was, I can no longer allow myself to sit in this pain of indecision, because at this point, I know what the right answer is. I know what has to change, and I haven't been taking the right actions in order to shift that. So I say for me in that pivotal moment, it definitely was deciding that as soon as I decide, that's when the pain stops. Doesn't mean that's not when it doesn't get scary. You make a decision, it's still scary. I had no backup plan. I had no idea if it was going to work. I had no idea what was going to come next. But I did know the pain would stop as soon as I at least stood for something for myself.
I love that. And I love that separation too of the decision is what stops the pain. you don't necessarily have to take action right away, right? You schedule, send your resignation.
Yeah.
So then, walk me through then, because the life you're living right now is very different than it was 5 years ago. Like it wasn't just a job. You quit your job, started a business, moved to Mexico for part of the year, and of course, got a divorce. Walk me through and help me navigate that undoing of the to-do list.
Yeah, totally. So it's interesting. I think after I quit my job, I had been married for a year and a half at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is like through the pandemic. I went, I'm going to go all in on my business. I had nothing else there was no choice or like nothing else to fall back on. Right. So my thought process was, okay, listen, if my business doesn't work out, I'll give it 3 months. If it doesn't work out, I will find another job, or I'll try to find another job. I'll work at Starbucks. Like I don't have to be working in TV. Like I'll do something if it doesn't work out, but I have to allow myself that opportunity to see. And so from a timeline perspective, I just like really went all in on my business. I was really lucky because of that client that I had. She is, a big expert in the women's wellness space, has a bunch of really great, friends. She's a big expert in the space. So she had a bunch of friends and peers that also needed support throughout the pandemic with their social, also some virtual assisting work. So literally, and she also had said to me, she has a clinic, and told me, listen, if this doesn't work out, you can work at the front desk of my clinic. Like you're going to be fine. So I think I was lucky in the sense that I knew there were other alternatives if what I wanted to do wasn't going to work out for me.
Yeah.
And so, all that was happening, and I started to get new clients, and I started to build confidence in myself as I was serving clients, because there's something that it's weird. Like when you're a employee or you're working for somebody and you're kind of just like, like checking off the things on the to-do list, you're doing tasks, as opposed to when you're selling your talent in a way. You have to sell people to believe you. And it really is kind of like, there's this confidence thing that comes up where, wow, these people, like they believe in me. They think I'm talented. They think I'm good enough to pay me their hard-earned money to do something for them. And so that gave me a lot of confidence because of how quickly people were coming my way and trusting me and seeing me as a creative and as an expert, in contrast to the television industry, where you have to put in the reps for many, many years before you actually get to become a producer. And so I think that helped me accelerate from a confidence perspective. And it just really pushed me to ensure that I was showing up authentically. Who am I? What do I believe in? Why am I different than any other social media manager? And I had to start marketing myself so that I could find new clients, because I wanted to get to that 6-figure social media manager range. And I wasn't going to do that just by somebody, referring somebody to me every month. So I really had to get comfortable with putting myself out there. And I've always loved to be in the limelight. I've always loved, entertaining people, things like that. But I had to learn how to do that strategically to generate business and to get clients. And so that was a whole journey of, when you put yourself out there, it's really vulnerable. And so I was really, connecting with that higher version of myself. I didn't know it at the time, but I was really like building that confidence, connecting with that self. And I really started to question, what are my beliefs? What do I believe in? How do I show up? Do I make decisions in this way or that way? And I started mirroring in my relationship certain things. And I was noticing, okay, my relationship with my clients, 10 out of 10. My relationship with my friends, 10 out of 10. My work that I'm doing, 10 out of 10. Why is this, I'm expressing myself, I'm showing up, I'm really growing and evolving, but it's very stagnant in my marriage. My marriage, things were really, really not great because it was a point of tension. It wasn't in alignment with my higher self.
Yeah.
So as I was becoming more of who I am meant to be, standing in alignment with my higher purpose and my higher self, it really just became very apparent that was not energetically on the same level as to where I was headed and where I wanted to go. I kept growing, and that was a part of my life that wasn't on the growth trajectory. And so I'd say within, I'd say I'd been married for a year and a half at that point. At like the 3-year marriage point, I knew it was like, it wasn't serving me anymore. And I just started to think about, this question of mediocrity. And it's interesting, not to go on a whole long rant, but the tagline I have for my business is, we don't do mediocre. And I just had this like really difficult moment after, difficult moment in a marriage. Everyone who's ever been in a relationship, I can relate. You have a difficult moment I'm just sitting there thinking, why am I tolerating mediocrity?
Yeah.
Like, he was a great person, like not a bad, nothing, wasn't
Yes.
like a terrible toxic relationship. It just, neither of us were happy. And
Yeah.
if everything else in life is good and thriving, why can't that thrive too? And
Mm-hmm.
so I just came to this realization of, I am accepting mediocrity in this, and I'm showing up with mediocrity because I'm not serving his highest purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And just like really stepping into alignment, like with the messaging, what I was putting out there. I did a rebrand for my business, and I really showed up as this powerful woman, really taking, like, this is who she is. She is authentic. She is real. She is, powerful, all the things. And I just, as I was becoming her, it just wasn't in alignment, where I was when I was 22 at this point,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like 20, 26 or 20. Yeah, I was like 20, 25, 26 at this point.
Yeah.
And so I just knew it was something that had to be shed. It was like old skin. I had to step out of it. And so again, another moment where I did not know what was beyond me. I didn't know what would happen. And I just knew that it wasn't right. And I had to take action. I felt so alive in every area of my life. And I felt so dead inside when it came to my marriage. So
Mm.
we made that decision. And it's getting divorced is hard, but being divorced is really fun.
Well, and I think what the picture that you're painting, who you are at 22 is very different than who you are sometimes even at 23. Like there's so much self-discovery that happens early in life that if you don't have a partner who is willing to be along with you as you change and discover who you are, of course, your relationship isn't going to survive. In any relationship, a friendship, a working relationship that doesn't allow you to go on this journey and discover, well, this is actually what I am put on this planet to do, and fully explore your gifts and talents. Yeah, none of those relationships are going to survive. So of course, of course, it went through this journey. What I'm hearing too is, there is a bit of an echo to, when you started off your adult life, ticking all the boxes in your early 20s. You mentioned, your higher self. So there is a version of you that is appearing, and there's new information, so new standards, new checks that you're ticking off in a to-do list. Does this feel different though, because you're in the driver's seat of what this future looks like? Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I love that because yes, it definitely does feel different. Recently, and I know you would ask me about like my Mexico experience, which I know I haven't on yet. We'll get to it.
There's a whole chapter we haven't got to.
We can get to that.
Yeah.
But I just remember, the first year I started my business, I started doing mindset work. I got very into, manifestation, mindset, positive. I had been dealing with depression for many years, and I wanted to come off of antidepressants. And so part of how I was supporting myself was by actually practicing mindfulness, breath work, setting intentions and things like that while I was weaning myself off with my doctor. And so I just remember I was working with a mindset coach, and she takes us through this visualization. And in my mind, I met my higher self.
Mm-hmm.
And my higher self, I can send you a photo afterwards. Because I did a photo shoot in which I literally was her.
Yeah.
I just saw myself in this image with like short, cool, little bob cut, blonde, with a white suit and Louboutins. And I just standing in like a power pose. Like that was just what I envisioned of myself. And I just remember this is who I am. Like, this is who I'm going to become. And I was not that at the time. I was literally not not. And so that was who I just kept channeling or thinking about as I was making decisions. Like, this is who I'm becoming. This is the businesswoman I am. Now that person still is that's who I kind of look to. And it was cool because I did this photo shoot, and these photos were literally that in the white suit with that outfit, and that, kind of manifested that into reality. But what's cool too is that there's another version of her that isn't just working all the time, businesswoman. There was this image that I started having through my divorce of me in the ocean with my hair blowing in the breeze, with a long dress that's just kind of carefree in ease. And when I went to Mexico, and when I decided to, be a digital nomad and go there, it was this playful energy. And again, I was looking to my goals, my higher self, who it is that I want to become in order to achieve all of those pieces. And so it's just really cool. Like I have it as the background of my phone because it's not just like the photo, it's how does that photo make me feel?
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking about that, like when those hard decisions come up, because I'm always on my phone, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a millennial, I always need it. But I always have that reminder, that visual reminder, like who am I? Who am I becoming? And am I showing up as the person that I say I am and the person that I say I want to be? So I'd say like having those constant reminders and visualizations has also been really, really helpful in becoming and making those decisions.
And what I'm hearing too in your explanation is that you've also built in some flexibility, right? This image and how you define this future self, there's flexibility in who that person is, and it's about connecting to how you feel about that image today. So then let's go. Then of course I've gone out of order because I always do. Mexico, walk me through then the decision to become a digital nomad. Where were you at in your timeline, and what influenced that decision?
Yeah. So as I started growing my business was always digital. I never had to be in one place. When I was working in when I was in TV, I just was like remembering I had to go in to work to literally go to work to film to be part of anything. And I just, again, like through TikTok, through social media, I was seeing other people doing this where they were working online, drop shipping, other, crypto, like just like different industries where people were able to work online and be in Dubai or Mexico or, Costa Rica and like just different places. And as I was married, my ex was in law school at the time. And so he couldn't really travel. During COVID though, what was really cool was it shifted reality. Yeah. You could be anywhere and work anywhere. Things moved online when that wasn't a reality before. And I discovered the book, The 4-Hour Work Week. And that really inspired me, it's really cool because that was written obviously before the pandemic. But I just, started thinking, hey, this is possible. And so during the pandemic, me and my ex, we were thinking about going to Mexico, thinking about going somewhere for, a couple months. Save some money because, it's like much cheaper to live in those countries than it is in Toronto. And, just like thinking about it, but we never did it. It was like, we'd always talk about it, but didn't take any action on it. And, then he became, went through law school, things like that. And it was never possible for him to actually go. And so I couldn't, I started doing my own little solo trips. I'd go, my family lives pretty much spread out throughout America. So I'd go spend a week with them, come back. And I just felt so alive and free when I was traveling. Loved it. And I started looking at what I was doing in my business and saying like, I can literally exist anywhere in the world because my business is digital. I just need a Wi-Fi connection. And I just need, to make sure I'm in not even the same time zone, but make sure that I can plan my day and take ownership of it. And so as soon as, we got separated, I waited for my lease to finish. And the first moment I could, I packed everything up into storage. It was scary. It was a very scary moment because again, I have this goal, like this check box of like a list of everything I'm supposed to be doing. And most people don't pack up their whole life, into a storage container and move countries to experience a different culture and go somewhere that I'd never been. I didn't speak the language at the time. And I just decided to go to Mexico City. And so I sent in my notice and then I just decided Mexico City felt right. I don't know. I can't tell you why Mexico City felt right. It just did. I heard it. People that I started meeting, clients started saying, oh, I just came back from Mexico City on vacation. I had someone come like clean my apartment one time and they're like, oh yeah, like my family lives in Mexico City. Like the name of Mexico City kept coming up. And that was a sign to me. Okay, I'm making the right decision. That sounds like the right place. And I had never heard one person say anything negative about it. I've only heard like 10 out of 10 experiences. The people are so warm. And that was exactly what I needed at that point in my life. Because again, I had been through a couple, I think it was just about not a year, a few months into my separation, maybe 6 or 7 months into separation. And I needed connection. Because that was the hardest part of my divorce was just that feeling of loneliness. Even if I had people, I just needed to get out and switch it up and just change. And so in June of last year, I packed everything up, went to Mexico City. I remember sitting on the plane and like talking to the pilot after, and he's like, because we were delayed, and he said, oh, so you speak Spanish? I said, nope. I didn't even know how to say hi. I didn't know hola. I didn't know please, like nothing. I knew nothing. It's like, you probably should like download Duolingo or something. It's like, you're going to need Spanish for where you're going. It's not like Cancun vacation. I was like, yeah, I'll be okay. The moment I landed in Mexico City, I knew I made the right decision. I felt this hug. I felt so embraced. I was like, what is happening? Like, so things were fast paced around me as I got off the plane, but I knew it was the right decision. And I stayed there for 2 months. I ended up coming back, and then I did some traveling through Europe. And then I came back, and I just really paid attention to myself, what was needed. And I decided to go back to Mexico, and I went to Playa del Carmen to experience more of like a warm beach vibes. And I went there for a week, and I fell in love with it, and I ended up staying 6 months. So yeah, so that was pretty much how it started. It was really, truly just following my intuition. And then I just met incredible people who were business owners, entrepreneurs, doing things that I, wanted to be doing, having accomplished so many things. And they really helped me grow my business and scale and all the things that I needed in life. They were able to support me with that, and vice versa. So it's been so amazing when you travel, especially at a young age. You learn so much that you just don't learn otherwise.
There's something about travel, but there's also just something about getting off of autopilot and getting out of your routine. Like, you don't have friends there. You don't have family there. The community that conditioned you to get married at an early age, they're not there either. You don't have the language. When you're going through a reinvention, you actually do need to kind of hit like a factory reset. Like, just remove anything that's familiar, because the familiar will bring you back to your set point. The familiar will bring you back to what you know. I think at that moment of, I am meant for something different, so I need to be my life needs to be completely different. I think you can get that through travel, but you can also get that through just being aware of, well, when am I on autopilot? Am I choosing this because it's familiar? Or am I choosing it because it's right? I think that there are many ways to do that shedding process. So walk me through then the reinvention in Mexico. Like, how did you fill your day? If you don't know anyone, you don't speak the language, how did you get through like a typical Monday?
Yeah. So the first day I got there, I actually was just, I'm going to explore. I'm going to look around.
Yeah.
Before I go anywhere, because again, I had been doing like week-long trips just across the states to visit family, or even I had gone like to Sedona, Arizona by myself. I went to Utah. Like, I just did a little bit of exploration. Fun fact, I'm gluten-free. And so because of that, I'm always researching restaurants before, because I need to make sure that it's safe for my allergies. And so through that, I just compile all these lists. And again, through TikTok, which I guess is kind of funny if we're talking like the media influence in people's lives. For me, like, literally I rely on that to, for my food restrictions. Anyways, so I had researched a bunch of restaurants. Apparently, Mexico City is one of the best places in the world for food. It's an amazing food scene. And so there was like 7 gluten-free restaurants that I wanted to try. And so I heard about these parks, and I discovered so many things about Mexico City because I was planning this trip. And so I just like go out of my apartment, and I had made a decision. Like, I was so open to inviting aligned opportunities. That was just where I was at in life. I wanted friends. I needed warmth. I needed connection. And I literally walked out of my apartment, started like, had my GPS, wanted to be like on quiet so people didn't know that I was obviously a tourist. Started looking around, and I just like was so calm and open. And I'm not the only person that goes there as a digital nomad. There's so many digital nomads. And so I was walking, literally met somebody. We're chatting at a coffee shop because they spoke English. I spoke English. They helped me order my coffee. And I'm like, oh, do you know this restaurant? I'm going to go check this out. He's like, yeah, I do know it. Ended up becoming friends. Ended up hanging out the whole day. We were like, let's film content. Let's, because we're in similar industries. And we literally just became friends, hung out for a couple days. He introduced me to his friends. They introduced me to their friends. A couple of my friends had been to Mexico City before, and they made friends. So they connected us. Just things that you wouldn't normally do in your day-to-day life. Like, I don't know. Like, I know for me here in Toronto, I wouldn't text a friend and be like, hey, do you know anybody in Toronto that's looking for friends? Like, maybe we should. But I think because I was traveling and I didn't know anybody, I had a friend who had been to Mexico City for 3 months. Hey, can you connect me with anybody here? I want to learn Spanish. I want to, learn more about the culture here. Do you know anybody who's local? So I think I just really pushed myself out of my comfort zone and really embraced every opportunity that came to me. And one of the best opportunities that came to me, and I'd say it's probably one of the highlights of my life, is when I was it actually also came after a pivotal moment. I made a big decision. I was very heartbroken. I was seeing somebody and I broke up with them. And I remember afterwards, I like get in an Uber to go to one of these restaurants that I want to check out to console myself. And the Uber driver spoke perfect English. And he's like, "Why are you crying?" And I tell this stranger my story. And he says, "We're doing a Temazcal tomorrow, which is a ancient pre-Hispanic ritual. It's basically like, for lack of better, my own explanation, it's a like sweat lodge, and it's very spiritual, and it's all about shedding. You're going into like a womb and like shedding your stories and coming out new again, having this form of a rebirth." And so he invited me to join, and so I did. And he told me, he comes from an indigenous Aztec tribe, and he invited me to connect with abuelas, abuelitas, different people who were part of that community. And that helped me also on my healing journey, because I got to connect with people, and I got to connect with the culture in a way that I might not have if I had been closed off to types of experiences.
Absolutely.
And that was literally because of an Uber driver. That was the best experience of my life, the most healing I ever experienced, the most insight I've ever experienced. I'm still friends with them to this day. They still check in on me. We have Zoom calls all the time. And I feel like, they call me like Hermana Canadiense, like I'm the Canadian sister. And it was so beautiful. And for me, my biggest lesson is being open to the opportunities, because they're there, but you have to be open to receive them.
We started this conversation, you identifying so strongly you're a storyteller by trade, but there's so much of your personal journey that is about learning to let go of the stories that weigh you down, to create space for the stories that are just filled with possibilities. Like, listen back to all the times you talked about, well, that's when I realized that this was possible. And that's when I realized that this was possible. Like, you were just on this journey to expand and explore. And again, on the accelerated program of like, what else is possible? Like, I love hearing this, but also how digital media and information sharing and how powerful and fluid that is, how that influences your story. And then I think that's also a huge standard for you and your business, because the horse is out of the barn, right? Media today is fractured. It exists in a bunch of different spaces. I keep saying you can't control the story. You can only control what you share. You're unique, even with your journey and this deep insight of just the liberating power of the right of aligned storytelling and how that informs your business. To me, that's what I've been hearing in this journey, going from, you're checking all the boxes. I'm gonna have life figured out by 22. Now you're 29, and there's just this great acceptance of, I'm still figuring this out, and figuring it out is the fun part. Figuring it out is awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's really when it comes to marketing, right? Like, you do have to test. I mean, I do think, I obviously have, strategic insights when it comes to marketing.
Yes.
I'm not the person that says throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. There is formulas. There are things that do work, but you do have to have flexibility in trying new things and shifting it up, because that's how you learn. You have to put out a volume of content in order to look at it and look at all the data and the insights and the analytics to say, okay, why did this work? Why didn't this work? This worked well. How can I double down and repeat that? And so, of course, I think for me, my career is in a place, like we've scaled very quickly. I love what I'm doing in terms of the work and the clients that we're getting to work with, and what we're doing in terms of storytelling and marketing, and, generating really, really awesome results there. But I do think through stepping into alignment and through having this business and building it in a way that is in alignment with me and my goals, that has allowed me to step out and step into alignment with myself.
So you are 29. When do you turn 30?
January 19.
Okay. So what do you think your 30s have in store for you?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know. I definitely know. I always joke. I say that like I lived like 7 years in the last year.
Yeah.
I know, like, in my 30s, my company is going to like triple, quadruple, beyond. Like, we're gonna grow and continue to grow in our impact and what we do. I think in my 30s, I don't even know. Like, I don't even want to put like a label on it. I know like my company is something that I am so passionate about. I know we're just gonna continue telling stories. I'm sure new social medias will come out. I'm sure new moments will come out. We'll be playing into that. I think I'm just kind of taking it like, day by day, seeing what feels good and feels in alignment, and just continue to grow in that way. So I don't know. I don't know what my 30s will be like. I didn't know what my 20s would. I mean, I thought I knew what my 20s would look like. And that kind of didn't happen, but definitely like a lot more travel, a lot more business growth. I definitely want to tell my story and help people see in themselves like that they don't have to go down the traditional route. They don't have to live a life that they've been told. So help other people show up in their most authentic self beyond just as clients in my agency, but also maybe through, public speaking engagements, things like that. I definitely see that in my future. But I don't know where I'll be living in the world. I'm sure wherever I am living will hopefully have a beach and be warm. But definitely my passion is in growing my company and really helping more people show up as their most authentic selves and tell their stories in a way that helps them with their business.
I love how much of your life is so confidently undefined for you. You're like, I don't know where I'll be living. I want to then look back then. So look back at your 22-year-old self. What advice would you give yourself at 22, making those very permanent, big decisions?
Stop being so rigid. I told you before, right? Like the best moment of my life was when I was 28 years old and I spent a weekend in Cuernavaca, Mexico with with a group of people that I didn't speak the language, didn't know the culture, and I met them because of my Uber driver. And had I not had a conversation with my Uber driver, I wouldn't have gone. Had I planned out my full trip itinerary and I didn't have a free day the next day, I wouldn't have gone. That was the best. That was the highlight of my life. I truly can say that with absolute confidence. It was the most incredible experience. And you're closed off to things when you plan so rigidly. And we never know what's going to work out. Yes, you can have a loose plan. Yes, for sure. Yesterday, one of my friends who I met in Mexico City texts me and says, "Hey, do you want to go to Spain in July for Mad Cool Music Festival?" I booked the trip to go to Spain. Literally, I don't know where I'm going to be in July. Now I'm going to be in Spain. My point is I do have a business that allows me to do that. I will say it's not going to be like that for everybody. I've intentionally built my life in a way where I can have flexibility. I can don't have to be in that rigid life. And I started learning this as I started traveling for business. The first time I had a solo business trip, I was really, really nervous. I went to Los Angeles, and my business coach at the time told me, don't plan anything. You have your client event on Wednesday night. You're there for 5 days. Don't plan anything. Just listen to your intuition. What feels good? Take your meetings in the morning and then go for a walk and just open yourself up to opportunities. And so I did. And then, after my client event, there was a bunch of like music producers. And so they're like, we're going to make music. And so we did like I sang and made music with people. I wouldn't have had that had I decided, nope, tomorrow I'm going to the Grammy Museum and therefore I have to go to bed at 10 p.m. because I have to get ready for it. When you make yourself so rigid and you say, this is what I'm doing, I'm not going to allow myself to go outside of the box, you close yourself off to really incredible opportunities. And so there's obviously balance. I don't think you should be, I'm a very structured person. Again, like I have an agency, I have responsibilities. I do have a routine that keeps me sane, but also I really get in touch with the advice I'd give myself is start listening to your intuition. It's there. It knows, and stop being so rigid and stop saying no. Say yes to things that are in alignment with your values and everything will work out.
So walk me through then, what do you have structured, right? What do you have figured out to allow for the flexibility?
So I have a very time blocked schedule in terms of my meetings. So every single day, like for example, Mondays and Fridays are not client facing days. No client will get a meeting with me on a Monday or Friday. It's internal team and it's networking and internal marketing days. So obviously today's a Monday, this is something I consider networking and marketing. So, there's time for that. Every single day I do ice baths. 4 times a week I do ice baths. I exercise every single day, get at least 30 minutes to an hour of movement, whether it's every single day, whether that's actually doing weights or whether that's a class, whether that's walking, non-negotiable. And like breath work every single day, meditation, breath work. And so truly just having those things to keep myself grounded and check in with myself and regulating my nervous system. I think that's a really big piece when you go from being a freelancer to a business owner, CEO, when you're running a company, when there's people that you have working for you that you have to be the rock for and lead.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be proactive rather than reactive, because there's so many things as an entrepreneur that come up, as where it's totally out of your control.
Yeah.
And I think as I've scaled, the biggest things that have helped me, the biggest thing that actually helped me go from, I'd say like first milestone to where we're at now is I'm proactive at I'm making decisions before, there's a problem that we have to
Yeah.
do. So
Mm-hmm.
training my nervous system through, through ice bath training, like learning to be resilient and building that muscle has really, truly supported me in everything in life.
Mm-hmm. That's the second time where fast decisions has come in as a superpower. So because I think there's a difference between acting impulsively and making fast decisions.
Yeah.
So walk me through then your quick decision making process.
Yeah, I'm not an impulsive person at all. Absolutely not at all. It's funny. I think this actually comes a lot with branding, not to be cliche, because obviously, social media marketing and branding and things like that. If you are clear on your values, and this is what I recommend. When I did a rebrand of my business, I actually wrote out what are my values. And I think if you're a service provider or you're the face of your business, often your values in your business will be your personal values, and that your business is an extension of that. And so I know my values. I have them all written out. And those are also my personal life values. And I sit and I think about those values every time something comes to me. Is this a decision that is in alignment with all of these values? And if a part of me feels off, if a part of me feels no, if my intuition is telling me this isn't right, I listen to it. I don't fight it. And I just really check in with these values. Is this a decision that is going to lead me towards the person I want to be? Or is a decision detracting me from who I'm trying to be? And is it not in alignment with my values and how I operate? And if you know your values and you know what you stand for, you're just making decisions that are in alignment with that. So I've been lucky to, my clients are all very successful business owners. And because of that, I've learned that from them is we don't sit in the negativity. Something doesn't work out. Okay, cool. We can sit and cry about it for a week, or we can just okay, what did we learn from it? What do we need to do move forward? Let's take the lessons. Let's not let it be in vain, but let's actually do something different. Let's take action. Quick action and taking accountability is how you're going to get to the result that you want much faster. We all have things that we can look at and be upset about and kind of focus on, but I really do see the big thing that separates my clients that I've worked with over the years, the people that I've looked up to who are super, super successful. They make decisions that are in alignment with their values, and they make them very quickly. So I've tried to learn from that and mirror that.
Yeah, there are things that I think that you were principles that you're living by that you learned in the beginning. So making quick decisions, alignment checks, and operating from your values. So in the beginning, those would have been the principles that helped you shed a lot of things that were no longer serving you. Now it feels like you're at that point where you're shedding stuff that just kind of feels a little bit awkward. Like you're not letting it get heavy and stinky and like a teeming pile of garbage. You're shedding quickly, which again allows you to operate faster. So how is this helping you process your divorce?
It's interesting. I just think there's so many things in life that we can be sad and depressed about. And I literally, I had gone through depression. I was on medication for it. I think there's so many things. Look at the state of the world, right?
Yeah.
I think being happy is a choice. It's a choice to put in the work to try. It's hard to focus on positive things because there's so much around us that, we have a negativity bias. And so for me, I just had to start thinking what can I look to be happy, to be the person I want to be, to try to create this reality for myself where there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is all of that. And so I think number one, it's really allowing myself to be real and be real with myself and saying it's okay if it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It doesn't have to be sunshine and rainbows all the time. And that's not bad. I think taking away the stigma of feelings aren't good or bad, they're neutral. Yeah. So really getting, clear on that has been that has helped me to process and to move through. But also, again, checking in with my values and alignment and seeing I am becoming that person. Yeah. That is the woman that I say I am. That is a woman that I am. And I'm just waiting for that to manifest into reality. And the more I make decisions and the more I choose her, the more quickly I will become her. And I know she's in my vision, she's happy. So I'm going to make choices that make me happy. And that doesn't mean being impulsive and not considering my friends and not considering other people.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, people matter and relationships matter, but really just, yeah, I think the more I make decisions that are in alignment with myself, the more I'm healing that part of me that for, you know, 22 years of my life made decisions that were not in alignment with myself, that someone else was telling me. So I felt like there's been so much momentum. Like I said, I lived 7 years the last year.
Yeah.
Been so much momentum because I have literally been choosing myself, choosing the values that are in alignment with who I am and making those choices every single day.
Yeah. You are your higher self right now. It is just screaming through the screen. One thing I'll share with you too, because I had the same approach to feelings. Like they're neutral. They're not good or bad. One thing I also remind myself is that they're temporary, right? So when like that, there's not a whole lot of good in the world happening. There's like the foundation is shifting beneath our feet again. It's temporary, right? It's also the story. It's the story that you add to it. So the economy is doing what the economy is doing right now. As a business owner, you're in control of the story that you make around that. So once I think it's important to get neutral. Let anxiety and negative feelings pass. Don't fight them. Let them pass through you, and then make decisions based on what is best for you and your future, because those decisions might surprise you when they come up. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you'd be like, the more you do it, by the way, the easier it becomes because you start to get used to what it feels like to listen to your intuition. And part of why I do ice baths and cold exposure and things like that is because it's literally, you're physically stripping everything away from you. I do, like, my intuition speaks to me in those moments. That's where I make business decisions. It's so funny. I'll be in this like ice bath and all of a sudden, like, I'll have a question that I'm pondering, a difficult situation with somebody on my team or, a client, and I don't know how to deal with it. Before I, ask a million people, I just check in with myself and I get into that ice bath and I connect with myself, everything's stripped away. And I hear myself like, this is the right decision. Sometimes it's random and I don't understand why. I'm like, why am I telling myself this? But then I do it and it works out. And I think, it's really, truly like getting clear, like listening to, the more you do that and the more you see results or the payoff of it, the more you're going to be able to do it. But it is a choice and it is hard. And I recognize, it's not something that we're not taught that. It's something you have to choose.
Yeah. Yeah. Listening to yourself and not what you should be doing it's a powerful position to be in. And sometimes it takes people 20 years raising my hand to learn that. So
because women, we're told not to. We're told to make ourselves small. We're told to fit into a box. And this is what the, ideal look looks like. And here's how you should show up. And here's how you should be. And, fit into this perfect little, frame and box. And I think of course, that's going to be how we show up in the world. Of course, we sample our voice. And, I saw, I don't know if this is too much, but I hope it's okay. I saw this quote where somebody said, and I don't know who it is, so I apologize to not give credit because it's probably someone amazing. The quote said is that the first time a woman bleeds is not from her legs, it's from when she bites her tongue. And I think so often we keep quiet to, fit into society's mold of what we should be. And that's, showing up and listening to your intuition and claiming that space is an act of rebellion, empowerment. And I think I'm so grateful that I live in this day and age where I can do that and reclaim that.
Yeah. And to be in a position where you have the skills to tell new stories and the insight to amplify this new version of you. So like I could talk to you all day about this. So if people want to learn more about your approach to marketing, your approach to storytelling and visibility, where can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm super active on LinkedIn. That's one of my favorite platforms. And if you're a service-based provider, I highly recommend that you get on LinkedIn. Anyways, find me on LinkedIn tomorrow. No, I mean for anyone who's listening, like anyone who's listening, if you're a service-based provider, definitely start showing up on LinkedIn. I know you are. That's how we're connected as well. So you can find me at Tamar Lyons on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Instagram at Lyons Digital Marketing. It's spelled the way my name is here. And you can also connect with me at Tamar Lyons if you want to see more about my personal life and how I'm showing up and kind of moving throughout the world as a business owner.
Oh, of course. I'm going to be creeping on the next decade plus on your life. See what new things you are. So I'm so happy and proud for your journey, and that I got to be a witness on two different pivotal moments of your life. So thank you so much for being here today, Tamar.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so great.